There is a woman sitting in a hospital room right now who believes she is dead, not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech. She is completely, calmly, absolutely convinced that she died weeks ago. She doesn't understand why her body is still here. She doesn't understand why people keep talking to her. She has stopped eating because dead people don't need food. She has stopped sleeping because dead people don't sleep. And the most disturbing part, she is lucid, intelligent. She can hold a conversation, answer questions, and explain her reasoning in perfect detail. She simply believes, with total certainty, that she no longer exists. This is not fiction. This is not a metaphor for depression. This is a real documented neurological condition that has been reported on every continent, in every culture, across more than a century of medical records. It is called Cotard's delusion. And once you understand what causes it, you will never think about your own sense of reality the same way again. In 1880, a French neurologist named Jules Cotard encountered a patient unlike anything he had seen before. She called herself Mademoiselle X. She told Cotard she had no brain, no nerves, no organs. She believed large portions of her body had simply ceased to exist. She refused to eat. She insisted she did not need to, because she was already dead, already damned, already beyond the reach of anything. Cotard published his findings and named the condition after himself. But here's the strange part. For nearly 100 years, the medical community treated Cotard's delusion as a psychiatric curiosity, a rare, strange symptom of severe depression, something that happened to a handful of troubled individuals. Then brain scanning technology arrived, and what researchers found inside the skulls of Cotard's patients didn't just explain the condition, it revealed something terrifying about the nature of consciousness itself. Your brain, right now, is doing something extraordinary. Every second, it receives millions of signals. From your eyes, your skin, your internal organs, your heartbeat, your lungs, and every second, it does something with those signals that you have never once thought about. It convinces you that you are real. That process, the continuous, unconscious generation of the feeling of being alive, is not automatic. It is not guaranteed. It is a construction, a story your brain tells you about yourself, moment to moment, without pause. And in patients with Cotard's delusion, that story breaks. When neuroscientists began scanning the brains of Cotard's patients, they found something that should have been impossible. The regions of the brain responsible for emotional processing, particularly the amygdala and the connected limbic system, had gone almost completely dark, not damaged, not destroyed, functionally silent. Here's why that matters. When you look at your own hand right now, two things happen simultaneously. Your visual cortex identifies it as a hand, specifically your hand, and your emotional brain fires a quiet background signal that says, familiar, mine, real. You don't notice that second signal. You've never had to. It has fired every single moment of your conscious life without interruption. But in Cotard's patients, the second signal stops. The visual cortex still works perfectly. They look at their hand and identify it as a hand. But the emotional confirmation, the silent pulse of realness, never arrives. So the brain does what it always does when data doesn't match expectation. It generates an explanation, and the explanation it lands on, the only explanation that fits the sensory evidence of existing without feeling real, is that you must be dead. Think about that for a moment. Your entire sense of being alive is not a fact, it is a feeling, and that feeling is being generated by a specific set of biological processes running in the background of your mind right now, processes you have no conscious control over. But this raises a bigger question. If Cotard's delusion is neurological, a malfunction in emotional processing, then why do the beliefs take the specific form they do? Why dead? Why not simply confused or disconnected or numb? Then researchers discovered something unexpected. The brain doesn't just generate feelings, it generates stories to explain those feelings. And the story it generates is always the most logical explanation available given the evidence. If your emotional brain goes silent, if the entire felt sense of being real, being embodied, being you simply vanishes, the most rational explanation your conscious mind can construct is death. Because in human experience, only one thing produces the complete absence of felt existence. The worst part? The patients know how this sounds. Many of them have said exactly that. They understand that people will think they're insane. They know, on an intellectual level, that dead people don't walk around in hospitals answering questions, and they believe it anyway, because the feeling is more convincing than the logic. In 1996, a man known in medical literature only as patient WI suffered severe brain damage following a motorcycle accident. When he recovered enough to speak, he told his doctors a simple, quiet fact. He was dead. He had been dead since the accident. He was certain of it. His mother took him home to South Africa, and he told researchers later what he believed during those months, that he had been taken to hell, that the heat of the South African summer was the heat of damnation, that he was experiencing the afterlife. He wasn't delusional in any other way. His memory worked, his reasoning worked, his personality was intact. He simply had no felt sense of being alive, and he had built a completely coherent worldview around that absence. You'd think that would be the end of the story. It wasn't. Because when researchers studied his brain scans alongside dozens of other Cotards patients, they found a second anomaly, one that nobody had predicted. The default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for self-referential thought, for the sense of continuous personal identity, for the feeling that the you who woke up this morning is the same you who went to sleep last night, was operating in a profoundly abnormal pattern. It wasn't just that these patients felt dead. They had lost the neurological thread of continuous selfhood that makes you feel like a single, persistent person across time. And that's where this stops being a story about a rare condition. Because here's the thing almost nobody realizes. The default mode network that broke in those patients, you are dependent on it right now. Every single moment. The continuous, unbroken sense of being you. The feeling that there is someone behind your eyes, someone who has a past, a present, a future. That is not a given. That is a process. A biological process running in real time, consuming energy, capable of being disrupted. Severe sleep deprivation disrupts it. Certain drugs disrupt it. Extreme trauma disrupts it. High fever disrupts it. Even prolonged isolation disrupts it. You have probably felt a mild version of this. That strange, dissociated moment when you catch your reflection unexpectedly and for just a fraction of a second, don't quite recognize yourself. When your own name sounds briefly foreign, when the feeling of being you flickers just for a moment before snapping back. That flicker is your brain reminding you, without meaning to, that your identity is not a permanent object. It is a signal, and signals can be interrupted. There is a treatment for Cotard's delusion, antidepressants, antipsychotics, and in severe cases, electroconvulsive therapy have shown success in rebooting the emotional processing systems that go dark. Patients who recover describe the experience in strikingly similar terms. They say it was like a light coming back on, not a thought changing, not a belief being corrected, a feeling returning, which tells you everything about the nature of what was missing. Cotard's delusion is not a failure of thinking, it is a failure of feeling. And when the feeling returns, when the quiet background signal of realness fires again, the belief in death dissolves instantly, not because the patient was argued out of it, not because they were shown evidence, but because they felt alive again, and feeling was always more powerful than knowing. Here's the realization that should stay with you. Every morning when you wake up, before you have a single conscious thought, your brain performs a process so fundamental that you have never once given it credit. It reestablishes you. It reaches back through memory, stitches together the thread of who you were yesterday, confirms the felt sense of your body, fires the quiet signal of realness, and hands you back to yourself. You wake up and you are you. You have never questioned that process. You have never had to. But the people who developed Cotard's delusion had no warning either. They went to sleep as themselves. They woke up, and something in that reestablishment failed. And in the absence of the feeling of being alive, their rational mind did the only thing it could. It concluded that they weren't. The strange thing isn't that some brains break in this specific way. The strange thing is that yours hasn't, yet.